dedication for the town, and he did a wonderful job fighting the fight for the Board of Education. Sometimes got a little upset at him, but we all liked him, and I want to wish him good luck on his new endeavor. Okay, so we don't have any public comments. We have any public comments? Approval of the prior minutes of November 10th. I have a motion for it. Minutes. Can I have somebody move it?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Oh, Mark's on. Okay. Can I have a second?
My internet, it sucks and I can't get in.
Okay. Can I have a second?
This is Sal. I second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excellent.
Aye.
Excellent. Okay. Old business. Okay. Let's review the Board of Education responses to us. Sal, you could, it's all yours, Sal. Let's review it. Got any
Hold on.
questions?
I lost you guys. Hold on. Oh, you can still hear me, right?
Yeah. Can you hear
Okay.
us?
I mean, look, they gave me, they gave us the detail. You know, I understand what they gave me. You know, I did ask for quantities where it was applicable. They didn't give it to me, but, you know, clearly it's, a lot of it is computers, you know, technology type stuff. And then some things I did with the gym, you know, with the McGee gym. So, I mean, it is what it is. I guess the only thing I would make a comment is, Sam, as we go through the budget process for the next coming year, if they can't give us responses in a timely fashion, I think we got to consider how we're going to approach the budget with them, you know, in a more forceful manner. So.
Well, I got, you know, if the board would agree with me, I got a great idea. Since John Richard is no longer our liaison, I think you should be our liaison to the Board of Education. Then you could communicate with them and tell them exactly what you want. Is that okay? I mean, is that okay with the board?
Good.
I don't have a problem with that.
Is it okay with the board?
Fine with me.
Tim?
As long as Sal's willing to do it, I mean, it's
I mean, you don't have to go to every Board of Education meeting. I wouldn't want to put you through that pain because I wouldn't do it. But
Well, they would love to see that my name's as a liaison, so I'd be glad to do it.
okay, then I'll send it to the superintendent because I think, you know, it's important to keep that liaison role with the Board of Education. If you could then, if you have any questions, you could just tell them what you need. Is that fair?
Yep.
What else do we need? We're all set. Any other questions? Any other questions with that letter?
No, I don't.
Okay, so okay, let's review the Board of Finance request for details for COVID. Kevin, it's all yours.
This is the same sheet that we reviewed last time, and one of the requests that came out of the meeting was to split the numbers between town and Board of Ed. So, just to be clear, this is, you know, these are general fund expenditures. There certainly were Board of Ed expenditures through the grant fund that they made. There were a number of items there, but this is. Well, so you can see that from most of the town items, they kind of spread out across different areas. We purchased equipment to try to allow for distant communication and meetings, work from home where necessary, but also a lot of PPEs, cleaning items and the like for the library, town hall, PD, those areas. And on the Board of Ed side, most of that equipment was related to technology. That related from everything from hotspots from Sprint for kids who didn't have good access to the internet so they could do distant learning, MacBooks, iPads, and other items to help students and teachers as we moved quickly. And just as a reminder, that period of time from March to June was a lot of uncertainty. Nobody knew, even from week to week, what was going on. We obviously have a much better handle now, but when it first started, we weren't sure if we were just going to be, you know, away for a couple of weeks or what it was going to take. And then ultimately it wasn't until later in the school year when it was determined that the school was not going to reopen. So that's where a lot of the technology work happened. And then obviously over the summer, there was much more advanced technology work, and I think the school was much better equipped to handle a lot of those matters. Much of that was purchased through the grant money, and there's been substantial state reimbursements on that side. So the Board of Ed receives that directly. That goes through the State Department of Education, and it stays with the Board of Ed. These are items that we sought and obtained reimbursement just after our last meeting. So I received the notification from OPM, and we received funding pretty quickly to reimburse for these items that are listed as reimbursable. We got about $132,000 back of CARES money from OPM.
So Kevin, the grant money, the grant money, where does that go? I mean, where does the expense go? I'm confused a little, you know? So, I mean, they have grant money and then there's expense associated with that grant, right?
Right.
Where does the expense show up on?
In the case of the COVID expenses, they're going to show up in the grant funds. And so I had actually sent out the tracking that the board sends out. There's a front page shows you the various categories, certified salaries, administration, et cetera. The backside shows the various grant funds.
Okay.
And you'll see that there are a number of grants there. The most significant driver of this was money that was available at the end of the fiscal year in the open choice grant. And that was where the board, and at the direction of the Board of Finance, was to expend that money first before coming back to the board looking for additional funds. To date, they've been able to meet the needs using that money. They have received a little over $144,000 from the first grant back from the State Department of Education. And again, that was money from the State Department of Education directly through the superintendent and into the school systems statewide, not just in Berlin. And then there is a second grant that has been provided. The town was awarded about $440,000 for education, again, directly from the State Department of Education to the board. And the board expends that through their grant funds.
So those actual costs, Kevin, they don't show up on the Board of Education's, normal report then? Is that how it works?
They would show up on the backside with the grant. Yes, they're not part of the general fund operating.
Okay. Because I see that on the choice grant, they carried over whatever, that $1 million from last year.
Correct.
And they pretty much expended or encumbered the whole $2 million, right? The way it looks like, or they have 190,000 left on budget balance. So
Right.
that's like almost. So what is that? Is that COVID also, or is that? What is that?
They used it for COVID, but there is not always a direct one-for-one connection between the timing of the expense and when the grant funds are received. So they may be expending money they will expend money all through the year, but the choice grant money may come back in later on. For example, the city of Hartford often reimburses for any excess special ed costs beyond what the state has provided, typically late in the year. They're going to reimburse that April, May, June timeframe, but we're going to have to expend that money to educate the kids all through the year.
This is as good as it's getting today. I don't know how.
I don't remember.
That wasn't me.
No, don't worry about it. What else? Anybody else has any questions? Jerry?
Nope.
Tim?
Nope, we're good.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, so now we're on number 3, building official feedback. Evan, it's all yours.
Yep. The chairman asked me to reach out and talk to the building official as we look at various development projects that are underway in town and how we expect that to impact fees going forward, and whether there's been any requests for waivers of fees, specifically to the economic development. So I'll take the last one first. The building official hasn't received any specific requests for waivers from these major projects. There are occasionally requests for waivers. Typically, they're coming in from not-for-profit organizations. One of the churches in town put on a substantial addition, requested and received a waiver of those fees, but it's typically something along those lines where they will come in and get that. So We haven't to date received any requests for waiving building official fees. That would of course be separate than any tax abatement request. It varies. He's looked back over the last few years. He's looked forward. We've had some substantial projects. For example, Mr. Orsini's done a couple of projects. He's got one active right now across from Sliders, kind of between Sliders and the Berlin Turnpike, substantial commercial and residential development. Prior to that, of course, next to that, he did the Acura dealership and the adjacent retail property. So we see some spikes like that in a given year. And then that obviously comes off from a building permit perspective once the buildings are done. And so we're looking at some additional new ones. We have Steel Boulevard with the Newport Group. You have the audio property as well that they're working on, and then some others that are in works. So at this point, we're looking at raising the building permit fees $100,000 year over year in the budget. That you're looking at about $450,000 of revenue from building permit fees. I will say that represents all of it will more than cover, that revenue will more than cover the building official's office. So the 2 building inspectors and the clerical person who is there. So they are certainly stretched thin with that, but from an ability to collect more revenue, it is certainly a healthy revenue amount, and it has increased as they've added a second building inspector about 2.5, 3 years ago. But they are definitely stretched with the economic growth. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that in the budget as well. Barosh, I don't know if you have anything you want to add on the building.
So when do you anticipate, I guess this is for the town manager, say the Newport Group, when do you anticipate the first building permit out during this budget season, or when do you anticipate them actually getting a building permit for phase 1 or building 1, whatever they want?
Yeah, I see this coming up in the next budget cycle.
Okay.
One of the things that I want to do is, you're going to see this in the budget request. I won't be asking for any new positions or anything, but I would need a temporary building official because they are stretched very thinly. First of all, because of COVID, nothing to do with these projects. A lot of people, which is good, they're putting pools and patios and bathroom renovations, kitchen renovations. In addition to that, Tony and Mark, they're going to start, cranking up, and they need to be out on the field a lot. And same with Orsini, and then there is also the audio project that's coming south of where the Blue Lobster is. So there'll be a lot of projects coming, and what I would propose when it's during the budget cycle is to have a temporary position, not a permanent one. I'm not big on adding positions, but to have a position for the next 2 to 3 years until we get through these projects. Because one thing that I don't want is to get a reputation like West Hartford. With all their good developments, it was a known fact in West Hartford, building department takes 2 to 3 weeks to respond to you. It's a bad place to be. We want to be seen as business friendly, efficient, and be responsive. So, that we can talk more later, but that's where I see this going, because it's going to begin to crank up beginning this spring and summer.
Sounds good. You just mentioned, I know there's a lot of home improvement going on during this COVID. Do you have any idea how much building permits dollar-wise you took in this home improvements and kitchens, etc.? I know it's picked up, what I read, nationally. How about in town? Nationally, building home improvements are booming right now. Self-home improvement, whatever. Did we see an uptick in permits?
Yeah, I can get the exact numbers, but probably fair to say, Kevin, 50, 75, that range at least. I've seen an increase, but we'll get you the exact numbers. It's plateaued probably just before Thanksgiving, and these folks are happy that it sort of stayed at that level. But I imagine might pick up again in January, February, because people do indoor renovations, which is a good thing.
Yeah, it's a very good number.
The building official estimated that we're seeing about 100 to 150,000 above normal building permit revenue. I mean, you'll always have the remodeling, you'll always have some level of development. That was where he kind of pegged it above. But you can also end up with the spikes. You might have a year where you get 300,000 above, but you might have another year where it's 100 and it's down year over year. So that's where, we're looking at boosting the number again this year as we have the last couple of years.
Sam, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Arosha, I just want to make sure I understood what you said, that you didn't anticipate any of the building fees for the project on Farmington Avenue to hit until in the next budget. And if that's correct, that means they're going to lose a whole building season?
No, but
It would seem to me that they would be, if this thing is moving, it's going to happen before June 30th.
yeah, they'll start submitting it beginning now, probably January, February or so, but the bulk of the work is not going to happen until the next fiscal year, especially when they get to the other commercial buildings and the residential more towards the end. So it'll start in the spring, but you're going to see most of the stuff probably picking up in the fall or the summer.
So do they pay those building fees before they start the project or as the project goes along? I thought it
I
was
think
before the project
yeah.
starts.
At different stages. I'm not exactly sure how much they get up front versus in the middle and the end, but they keep coming as long as with the project.
Okay,
So-
because Kevin, that's going to be a big thing for us for you in the budget to figure out how much is coming in before and how much is going to be in next year's budget.
That's right. So
Frank,
let me get this straight. Okay, let's just say hypothetically, let's go with the Newport project on Farmington Avenue. Hypothetically, it's a $17 million project. So they're going to build phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, hypothetically, okay? So phase 1, let's just say hypothetically, it's going to cost like, I don't know, 5 million, 6 million to put up. So do they take that building permit or whatever for the full 5 million is what you're trying to say, or they're going to do that in stages? Foundation permit or whatever permit. I would think like the heating, like plumbing or heating, that's a separate permit, I would think. Electrical will probably be a separate permit, but so that's how it's going to be divided. Like the electrical contractor will take his permit out, the plumbing contractor will take his permit out, and then whatever the
Right.
foundation, whatever. Am I correct? Is that what you're trying to say, right?
That is what I'm trying to say. Frank our building inspector did a back of the envelope calculation, and it's pretty substantial. You know, even for the first year, he had projected fairly close to 400 to 500,000.
For building permit.
Yep.
Okay, that's good.
So, it'll more than cover any, help that we are asking for. And so we'll put those numbers together. You'll see it in the budget cycle when we put it together.
All right, that's not a problem. All right, anybody have any other questions? Okay, let's move on to number 4, our defined pension.
Last time we talked a little bit about this, and the request was to see some of the details underlying the town's closed defined benefit pension liability. So these are directly from the 7/1/2020 defined benefit pension valuation from our actuaries. There are currently 9 active members, and their total liability adds up to $12.6 million. There are 3 termed vested employees, so they are not actively employed with the town, but they are vested, so they passed the 10-year period. And then there are 18 retirees or beneficiaries. They're in the annuity phase or the payout phase. They total about 1.5 million. So the total 7/1/2020 liability was just shy of $18.2 million. We subsequently paid out, one in July and one in August, 2 different individuals for just under $2.7 million. So those were paid. And we have the term vested employee one, 1,025,000. That's the one that we'll be paying out in April. That is the first point in time when that person who elected to leave before officially reaching the age where he was able to collect on his retirement. And so he will be collecting, he's expected to collect that in April. We also have another retiree who is expected to turn in his papers in a couple of weeks and be paid out in January. So, jumping to the risks and opportunities, if you've looked at that already, you'll see that I have two risks for the defined benefit plan. One is $2 million, which is high, and there's a second one. The $2 million is directly related to money that I'm going to come ask you for in January to fund those two payouts for those two individuals and their retirements. I do anticipate that there's very likely going to be two more, and that's where the second risk comes in. The good news from this, besides for the individuals who get to retire and walk away with a nice sum of money, is that this now brings us down. Once we have this other retirement, we'll be down to 8 active members of the plan. I can tell you when I arrived in October of 2016, we had 17 active members and $68,000 in assets. So in that time, we have managed to pay out, once this one goes in January, more than half of those active employees, and we've paid them out. We haven't issued pension bonds. We haven't deferred it or annuitized it over many years. The town has stepped up and made the payments, honored the checks. And we're on pace to continue doing that. Pay as you go is not the ideal scenario, but we've been able to execute it. And I think we have to, as long as we stay the course, the town will be in good shape for that.
Okay, how about, I know they're coming up with some type of plan. Have you guys discussed anything?
The new, potentially resurrecting the defined benefit plan for current active officers. We received the information back from our actuaries, and Arosh, Denise Parsons, the HR director, and I are going to discuss what they've given back, kind of what would the funding requirements be and what are the risks. And then we'll revisit it with the town council. The last time we brought this up, the council indicated that they would like input from the Board of Finance. So I suspect that taking that into account and then potentially having a joint meeting to discuss the defined benefit plan. Obviously, this is a significant decision for the town, even more so than even a major capital item, because you would be committing the town to a long-term liability that would presumably grow over time, but also would be intended to stem the exits we've been seeing from the police force and encourage longer tenure. And so more to come on that.
To the BNA number 5.
When you approve the stipend for the VNA director to take care of the quarterly audits, the quality assurance audits, one of the things that was requested is to see an example. What is it that you're offering a stipend from? What is required? So this was just put on here. The Q3 audit report was completed. It's obviously quite a few pages, so I'm not planning to go through all of it, but just to give you an idea of what is actually provided. And this is what Wendy, the VNA director, produced for Q3 and in support of the requirement for the VNA.
Do you have any questions over it? Harry, questions, Sal?
Well, I just, a couple of comments. I mean, it's hard for me to understand clearly, what it all means, whether they're getting better or not. I see that in the later quarter, some of the percentages have gone down. So I don't know whether they're getting, worse or, better than where they were in the first quarter or whatever. So I'm just curious to see, what's happening. Is something changing in the current quarter? Overall, I don't even know, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, how well is, how well they're operating because there's so many variables there, so, but I understand the report. I mean, there's a lot to report on, so.
Yeah.
Kevin?
Yes.
A while back, month or so ago, I guess, you guys were putting together an RFP.
Yep.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. There was a request, conversation, I want to say, at a Board of Finance meeting a couple of months ago to talk about an operational review, looking at the VNA to see if there are opportunities for improvements, ways to improve financially, or at least reduce the loss. So we put together an RFP to go out and request an operational review that would look at where are there opportunities to improve performance while still complying with HIPAA and other federal and state regulations, and certainly the town charter. That went out at the end of November. We requested questions back by December 11th, and we've requested bids back in to offer that service by January 4th, with the intention of having calls with any of the respondents that we'd like to ask questions of to understand better. January 6th, a kickoff for January 11th, and a delivery date at the beginning of March so that we would have information available to share for the budget process. Obviously, that's still a very tight turnaround, but we also felt that we needed to give people time to ask questions, be able to evaluate, and we also have the holidays right now. At the same time, we had to give at least a couple of months for them to come in, look at the operation, meet with various folks, including the director, town manager, others, and then come up with a recommendation and an assessment. So 2 months was what was left for that. To date, we have not received a single question on the RFP. This is an unusual one because I'm not sure who is qualified to do this. I'm not saying there aren't qualified folks. I'm just not sure who is. If you asked me, are we going to do a financial audit of the town? I can name firms and immediately say who might bid on this because who does that work. Even if you said we're going to do a compliance audit, I think it's the Center for Medicare and Medicaid. I might be getting the federal name wrong, but they have the right to come in and audit at any time, and they do surprise audits. They did it of the VNA last year, and the VNA actually did not have a single finding against them. So there are groups who do these things, but to put it all together and say, how do we run this? How do we do some things differently, whether it's additional marketing, operational changes, whatever, to improve the financial position? I'm not sure who is qualified to do that, but we will see who responds.
What if nobody responds? Do we have any ideas what we should? I mean, let's be realistic. Jerry, we have any ideas? Can we do it internally? Our manager? Yeah, I mean, if nobody replies. I mean, that's a specialty thing. I don't know if there's anybody out there really.
Yeah, I don't want to speculate and jump ahead at this point. I think we ought to just wait and see.
Okay. Everybody okay?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to get into the finances, but, you do have a $250,000 risk, in there associated with the VNA. And to me, that's pretty real. The way I see the numbers today, that $250,000 risk is pretty high probability. I would say it's even high. You said medium to high. So the question is really, we talked about there's a new billing process. Second of all, how well are they, how many people are they serving? So my concern is if this is going to continue, beyond this year, and this quarter, then it's going to go from 900,000 to 1.2 million loss. I mean, we've got to continue to have some serious discussion on where we're headed with the VNA.
The problem is the VNA is in the charter. If you were to make some changes to VNA, we would have to do the charter revision. I don't think that would be a wise decision. Charter revision.
Could a charter revision come up in next year's election?
Things can be done outside of changing the charter, and they came up in a meeting. Arosha, myself, the mayor, and the corporation council had a discussion before putting the RFP out, and it was decided that first we do the RFP so that we could get the views of an outsider, an independent party, so that it's not just us saying we got to stop losing money, and that we have some basis to go on. So there are other things, but we thought that this RFP process was the correct way to go in a logical process.
I agree with you. It's much. Because I think people in town like to visit nurses. I know we were on the charter revision for last time we did a charter revision. There was a discussion on what to do with the nurses, and we had a lot of people that came into our charter revision, said that they would fight tooth and nail. This is the problem. They do a wonderful job. Problem is they are losing money. So,
I think a lot of people don't understand the situation either.
oh, I realize that, but I mean, that's a very sensitive thing. It's a personal thing.
They're not providing a service that people can't get anywhere else. That's the thing.
Oh, I agree with you. I'm just saying that I know based on conversations, even in my own house, that we've used the visiting nurses before for our parents and other things. Yep. You can't, it's a personal feel. I mean, they have a personal contact with these nurses. That's what it is. I mean, you can get the services anywhere, but you develop a personal contact. That's the problem.
I agree with Tim that if people understood the full cost of the service and how few people actually utilize the service, anyone who is concerned about where their taxes are would be in favor of making changes.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Especially the fact that, like I said, they're not doing a service that's anything different than what other people can, you can get otherwise. If they were to go away tomorrow, nobody would really notice. It would
no one would notice.
Come into the house.
Yeah, no one would notice. I agree.
And by the way, we have 3 taxpayers in town who provide the same service. So I still don't understand why we just can't make this a referral agency to Berlin taxpayers' businesses. This is mind-boggling to me.
That makes a lot more sense than what we're doing now.
Heck yeah.
Well, let's wait to see what the proposals are, and we'll talk about it during the budget process. It's premature right now. Okay. Where's our for new business? Where's our assessor? Is he on?
I'm on.
Oh, how
Can't
are
get the
you?
Video. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing very good. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Same here.
I am excellent. I invited the assessor in because I think it's important. Assessments of the town. We had a little discussion a few months ago on how we assess stuff, and I think it's important to have the assessor in to give us what he actually does. How do we assess businesses in town? How do we assess like small, like backyard businesses, people that have like their landscape businesses in their backyard? What do we tax them? The new projects that we're going to have, the restaurants, the hair salons. I think it's important for the Board of Finance to actually know what a dollar for dollar, what does a hair salon bring us in? What does a small pizzeria in town bring us in for revenue? And this is the person to talk to is our assessor. So it's all yours.
Thank you. On that note, I sent some items to you. I sent a future growth for the project. I sent a detail for automotive shops and hair salons. How the law actually works is they changed the law probably 8, 9, 10 years ago, where what you declare on your federal income tax on cost is what's supposed to be reported on your personal property declaration. So if somebody buys a lawnmower for $10,000, they're supposed to declare the $10,000 as original cost. And we submit a personal property declaration with a depreciation schedule built in. The main difference between the declaration versus your income tax returns is on your income tax, that piece of equipment becomes fully depreciated down to 0. On our end, we have a residual value of 30% because we have to recognize that it's value, and you can still sell that item 10 years later, or 8 years later with a 30% residual value. So on a cost factors, we depend on the original individual to present their costs. Now, the law also says to me, when we have a non-filer, someone that does not file personal property, I am mandated by law to render an assessment and apply a 25% penalty. It's not an option. And how I would render an assessment is I would look at similar businesses. So if I have a hair salon that has filed an assessment of, say, $5,000, I would render, and I have one at 7 or 8, I would take an average or look at if they're size-wise and render that assessment on that individual that did not comply with the law. And then add 25% penalty. That's no option on my behalf.
Okay,
What else do we want?
so let's just suppose I decided to start a landscape business. Right? Got a trailer, lawnmower, leaf blower, whatever they have, a couple items. And I failed
Yep.
to report it on my personal property tax. And you drive by, for example, or you find out or whatever. So you're going to tax me on that. And then by law, you have to charge a 25% penalty. Am I correct?
That's correct. That's
Is that a one-time charge or just that's a one-time 25 is a one-time charge?
Yeah, well, it's annually, so if you don't file the following year and I have to make an assessment, I would file that 25% penalty again, because you file annually with your equipment.
That's mandated by Connecticut state law, 25%.
Correct.
So
Correct.
there's no waiver or anything.
There's no waiver. The law also allows, with good cause, for an assessor to grant up to a 45-day extension. So declarations are due November 1st. This year they were due November 2nd because the first fell on a Sunday. Now, if somebody can't make it, they're allowed, with good cause, I can grant an extension up to December 15th, 45 days.
Now, do we work with that individual? If an individual's a homegrown business and he violates whatever, obviously we'll work with him for the revenue. I mean, we're not going to slam him and drive him out of business. Am I correct?
Well, normally what I deal with, we need to step back and look at a landscaping business. Some of the landscaping businesses actually have more cost in their equipment than a small retail store. Some of these
I'm just
machines
using
are
that.
10, 15.
I'm just
I'm
using
sorry,
that
what?
for an I'm just using that for an
Okay.
example.
Yeah, normally if someone, like I had a couple people this year, they missed the filing, I gave them up to 45-day extension. They got their filing in to me. So they didn't get the penalty and they were able to render their costs. If someone doesn't file, then I have no choice but to look at other landscaping businesses and use that as a gauge to render an assessment.
All right, so
And then when I render an assessment, it's not the end of the world, because they get an increase notice and they're allowed to go to the Board of Assessment Appeals.
well, that's my point, right?
At that point, correct.
And the Board of Assessors has the final say, right?
The Board of Assessment Appeals, they can lower their assessment. Now, what's interesting is when the law changed 8 years ago, prior to the law changing, an individual, once the assessor rendered an assessment, the individual did not have the right to go to the Board of Assessment Appeals. But when they changed the law, they also changed the audit process. When we do audits on businesses, actually, if you don't comply with an audit, it's a Class D felony. And if I have to render an assessment because they failed to comply, when they go to the Board of Assessment Appeals, they have to submit their books and records. They're supposed to. What I normally have someone do is present them to me, because once they present it to the board, that becomes a public record, and I don't wish to have their tax returns as a public record.
Okay. Any questions? All right, I got a couple more on the
Sure.
development on Farmington Avenue, Kensington. What is it called? The Kensington Village, right? Is it the Kensington Village?
Which one?
The development, the Newport project.
Steel
Okay,
Boulevard,
well, you
Steel
got
Boulevard,
Newport
Mike?
and you got Steel Boulevard.
Right, but what do we call it? Kensington Village, right? What's the name of the project?
Well, I got Steel Street Boulevard.
Oh, yeah, whatever.
The big-
Okay. Yeah, right. The apartment complex that's going up. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, how are you going to base the, like, per building? How are you going to base the taxes on that? Because in reality, that project, what do you think that's good? I know you put it down. I don't have it in front of me. But what do you think you're going to get in tax revenue for that specific project?
Well,
And it's complete.
what I did
And also-
because I have
Also,
very little. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Also, I was talking to Kevin, is it true that they've asked for an abatement on their taxes? Or they're
Yes,
about
they
to
have.
ask? Pardon me?
Correct.
How
Yes.
many years? How many years?
That I don't know, but I understand they are requesting. They were actually requesting a similar treatment that Orsini's project got.
And what did Orsini get on his project?
On that project, the commercial, it's separating the two different adjustments or abatements. It's a residential and commercial. The apartments are naturally the residential side, and the building they're putting up is the commercial side. On the commercial side, it's 70, I'm going to read them off to you, 70, 70, 60, 60, 60, 60, and then it goes down to like 50, 40 or something like that.
So how many years is that? How many years is that? 5
It
years?
goes out to like 5, 6, 7 years. So originally, if you would have collected on the commercial building, you would get like 64,000. Now with the abatement, you get 19,000.
Okay.
And
On
then
the commercial.
residential, yep, on the residential side, it's 80, 70, 60, 50, 40. So the first year it's 80% off. So if you didn't have that, you would collect 258,562. That's an estimate of value. I came up with an approximate $11 million value with an assessment of $7.6 million. But because of the abatement, their tax liability would be $51,712.
Well, for the year, for each year?
For the very first year at 80%, and then the next
Okay.
year it's 70% off and 60, 50, 40, and then it goes on the tax rolls.
Okay. And the Newport people are looking for something similar, right?
I'm sorry, what?
The Newport project is going to be looking for something similar.
That's what I understand he's looking at.
Okay. How about other properties that are going to come off? How about Forest Machine? Is that going to be off soon? Like some taxes from them?
Let's see. I don't have that on my list, but I think it's two more years. That was like 50, 40. In fact, I can pull that up. Chris had sent me a file today.
That was
you
the
in a
first,
second.
that was the first 7-year abatement that the town did, to win that business. So it extended for several years.
Oh, that's
Let's see. Chris had sent me something. Where is it?
all right. That's okay. Can't find it. But needless to say, we are collecting some revenue from it. We're at the tail end. Am I
No.
correct? We're at the tail end. Am I correct?
With the manufacturer, yeah.
All right. That's a positive note. Okay.
I have a
So-
question.
Go ahead.
In terms of these percentages, are you consulted or are these based on what's just requested by the property owner?
I myself, I'm never consulted about what is appropriate or not.
Okay, so the property owner comes in with whatever ask that he wants.
Yeah, he goes to Chris Edge.
Then
Okay.
Chris
And then
Edge
Chris
goes,
Edge puts together and then submits it for approval.
There's from town to town, there's no particular pro forma. I mean, it's just whatever they decide they want.
Well, there's
They
there's
do submit a performa, but each town sets up their own economic requirements and what they're willing to give the abatement, how long.
Jerry, there are statutory limitations as to what communities are permitted to do. In other words, they can't offer, for example, like 100% abatement. It varies based on the nature of the business, what someone's doing for it. There are parameters. When somebody approaches Chris, he certainly goes through a process of looking not only at what's given up, but what is obtained. So, for example, a commercial property, he's going to try to evaluate not just what the building would be worth and then what the abatement, but also incremental personal property and any motor vehicle or anything else that might come with it. And then it's going to be reviewed by the Economic Development Commission to evaluate whether it's consistent with, the growth plans and growth expectations and whether it's consistent with what they're trying to do in growing the community. And then finally, it's going to be brought forward to the council for final approval before it ever gets approved. So it's not just somebody requests something and then Chris says, okay, go do it. There are several steps in the process.
I understand. One other question to the town manager. To the project that Sam was referring. It seems, I mean, I don't recall before hearing that they were going to be looking for an abatement of taxes. And it seems, if they hadn't, it seems a little strange to me that here we've gone through the whole project approval, the town already putting out its money to do the road, selling them land back at what was obviously a good price. And now to come in asking for a tax abatement at the tail, which I'm seeing as tail end of the approval stuff. Isn't this kind of surprising?
Well, let me take a step back. So until the John Orsini's project, the town didn't have abatement on residential projects. That had a lot of back and forth. And then, like Kevin said, this goes through with the Economic Development Commission, a lot of comparisons, what other towns do, and the cost benefit analysis and try to come up with a number that both parties can live with and back and forth with the council. Once you do that, it is not for that particular project. That becomes a town policy. Previously, even before John Orsini's project, there was a abatement program for commercial properties. So once that is established, unless we reverse it back, and I'll come back to that, because we have had difficulty in the past attracting developers to come and do mixed-use projects, especially residential. And there's a huge demand for apartments, and we haven't been able to deliver. So once that is established by the council, any developer coming in can ask for it because it's available. We can't just tell you, yeah, we gave it to your neighbor, but you're not going to give it to you. It's a town abatement policy that is available to any developer. And there are limits in here. They had to invest more than $12 million. So someone coming with $5 million building 2 condos or half a dozen condos not going to get the same abatement. Having said that, just today we've been having discussions about revisiting that policy, meaning clawing it back or making a different recommendation, but that's in the works. That's probably by January or so, we'll have a recommendation to the council, especially about, in my opinion, the giving abatement on residential properties. But
You know, I think I tend to.
Finish my point.
Oh, go ahead, Jerry.
But doesn't this all go counter to the fact that we negotiated in good faith for this project, assuming we were going to get certain paybacks on the tax side, and now all of a sudden we got to turn it around and abate maybe 80% of the first year taxes, 70, 60, 50? Just doesn't seem like a very fair transaction to me. That if we knew we were going to have to do these things, perhaps we wouldn't have paid for the whole road up front, or perhaps we would have sold the property at fair market value.
well, when you say we, with the state funding, right? State grants, we the town didn't pay for it.
You know, we're going to pay for some of that.
I agree with you, Jerry.
Yeah.
One thing that's important to note is this has been requested. I'm not suggesting it will or won't be approved, but this is still being reviewed by the Economic Development Commission, and I don't know what their final determination would be. I mean, Tim, you've obviously had considerable experience with the EDC. I want to make sure we're not mischaracterizing anything that the EDC does or the review that happens just as a procedure. I mean, do you have anything you would add to the process of abatements from the EDC perspective?
Well, I think the fact that we're getting some movement in town with all the businesses is a plus. I just look at what we had there before. They haven't approved the tax abatement yet for the Steel Boulevard over there, but look at what was on the Berlin Turnpike where Arseni's building the project now. We had a rundown pizza place that was falling apart, and okay, we're going to give them a 7-year tax break, but we're still going to collect more money in taxes in the first year than we were ever going to collect out of what was there before.
No, I don't have a problem with that one. I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with us negotiating a project already, saying what we're going to do in terms of selling them land, building roads, et cetera, and then we got to throw something else in at the end.
We don't know that we're going to yet. I mean,
Okay. Well, we'll play out.
I don't blame them. If I was a businessman and I knew that, I would certainly take a shot.
Right, but the problem I have, this is the way I look at this, and I agree with you, Jerry. This is a partnership between the private sector and the town sector. We partnershiped with Newport, and we should have negotiated this before. We should have thought ahead that Newport was going to come in with a tax abatement, and we should have said to Newport at the beginning before we signed the contract. We said, listen, if you're going to come with this tax abatement, then you're going to fund the road. We're not going to fund the road, or the state's not going to fund the road. I mean, I agree with you, Tim, but since this
wasn't there.
No, but this
talk about before until you.
No, but this was a partnership between the developer and the town, and we should have talked about it before. Arseni had perfect right to get his tax abatement. He's a businessman. He's got his own money involved. He's going to do everything. He didn't ask the town to come and build a road for him. He didn't ask the town to come and take care of any pollution. Arseni flipped the whole bill for himself, and he deserves a tax abatement. He invested millions and millions of dollars. But a Newport comes in, and they come in, and it seems that they're going to be dictating to the town because they got this so-called big project going on the Berlin town, which I don't know if it's going to work. My personal opinion, I have doubts about it personally myself.
Nothing's happened yet.
I'm just stating my opinion. I agree with you. I'm just saying I hope it doesn't happen because I just think I hope it doesn't.
About something that hasn't happened.
But I'm just
came in and asked for an abatement. I don't blame them.
I do blame them. See, I do blame them because we have a joint partnership with them. See, I do, and I think it takes a lot of nerve.
You wouldn't try and get the best bang for your buck?
Not if I'm partnering up. Not if I'm partnering up with the town.
Hey, Tim, I know where you're coming from, but I guess, Kevin, you keep me honest. Normally, you develop a little business profile or investment profile to say, here's how this all going to pan out. So was abatement of that level considered in this business plan ahead of time, or is it So that's my question. How do we approach it when we're going into the project and looking at what we're going to get out of it? And, how do we do it from a planning standpoint?
See, I agree with you. So we should have had discussion or business.
I mean, I don't even know if the Orsini thing is a policy either, Arosh, right? It's not policy. That was a one-time deal.
Yeah,
isn't it?
no, it's policy.
No,
You
it's not.
made a policy after the Orsini.
It's not per developer. We come up with a abatement policy for the town.
Okay.
Anybody can use it. So
Okay.
this was not available when Newport signed the deal. So it's
Okay.
available for Orsini.
Yeah.
They should ask for it.
Yeah, if it's policy, they can.
As of now, as of today, it's there on the books.
Yeah, but when
okay.
did the policy happen?
Development that's more than $12.5 million, you'll get it too.
Okay.
When did the
long
policy
as you-
happen?
Qualify for the.
What's the date for the policy? When did it happen?
It was a few months ago, probably this fall or summer, before
Who set the policy?
John started, just before John
No, but
Orsini
who did
started
it?
his project.
Who did it? The
I'm sorry?
town or who did it? The council or economic development?
Economic Development makes a recommendation and the council evaluates and approves it.
Council voted to
Well,
approve it, yeah.
Okay.
But
I
that
don't agree.
program wasn't there when they put all this together.
Yeah.
So Newport's taking a shot now. I don't.
All right. Yeah, if it's policy, they got an opportunity.
Town council to decide whether or not they want to give it to them.
Oh, you're right. I thought that this policy was enacted for a long time.
No, this is.
Oh, yeah, we have any other questions for the assessor? You have any other questions for the assessor, John? Mark, you have any questions?
I do not.
Anybody else?
Nope.
Okay, Mr. Assessor, you did a great job. Thank you and continue your good work.
Thank you. Enjoy your night.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Our financial update.
Well, I already spoke about the pension piece, so I was going to cover two other pieces quickly, and then I'll address any questions you might have on the numbers. First, you should have received an email from Kate Wall about a webinar that will be hosted by our Corporation Counsel, Jeff D'Onofrio, about ethics. If you didn't receive it, I can send it to you. Just let me know and I'll forward it. Hopefully you'll be able to attend. It's on Monday. So this Monday, the 14th at 6 o'clock. It's a webinar, so it's virtual. And so that's one thing. Second, our audit is almost complete. We are waiting for the final report to come back from QA. We've done our internal review. We've gone back and forth. So we're at the final stages. Corporation Counsel has sent their stuff in. So basically, I think the last piece we're waiting on, besides one final peek at the report, is to sign the management letter for all the internal controls and all of the other things. So I expect that we should be publishing that next week. Numbers are coming out good. It ended up being financially a good year. We ended up, I'd say, saving quite a bit of money with school and town buildings closed. There were a number of projects that were intended with contractual service costs that were not incurred because, no surprise, contractors were not generally engaging in a lot of business while we were in the midst of a global pandemic. We saved on electricity and a number of other areas from that perspective. We did incur some additional costs, both on the board and the town side, but as I mentioned earlier, the state through CARES Act funds, so the feds and state, I would say, provided some substantial relief to Berlin. I know there are a number of other communities in the state who are probably not in the same position because they have different social circumstances and as a result incurred substantial costs that Berlin did not incur. But overall, I'm happy to say that unlike the past couple of years, we did see improvement in our internal service funds. So we saw leveling off of our health insurance claims. So we saw a return, and you see that in the numbers here, more of a return to a better reserve position, which can help us weather a spike we might see once the vaccinations are in place and people are able to return to more, we'll call them routine procedures with physicians. So we've seen a slowing there. We have continued to work through, as I mentioned, the pension plan and some of the other areas. So we continue to see reductions in those liabilities. And we did continue the trend that we've had the last few years of a net reduction in debts. So our debt continues to come down. I've shown you the schedule before. If you go back to 2016, 2017, we were close to $108 million in debt. We're now down to about 91, which, while still high, puts us at least in line with our budget. And I think we have a trajectory to come down. So the audit, I think, is going to come out and show we continue to trend in the right direction from a financial standpoint and a stability standpoint, especially as we have uncertainty with the global pandemic and the results from that. So we continue to strengthen the balance sheet. We continue to see good cash flows. So with that, I'll open it up if anybody has any questions on any of the numbers that are out there or anything we're seeing.
Kevin, couple questions on the actual expenditures. Just something that pops up in my mind, but you may want to look at it or whatever. In the technology department, under salaries, wages and salaries, I know it's supposed to be, you guys got contracts in place, but the wages and salaries remaining is around 78% there. So that means you're not spending to, you're underspending to plan. So I'm just curious on that one. So you don't have to give me the answer tonight, but you can follow up. And then on Department 3561, if you recall, in October we added $15,000 for health aid to help out with COVID situation, but yet the nurses and the actual health aides are at 79% remaining on health aid salary, and nurses is 69%. So I mean, we gave 15,000, but yet we're underspending the budget considerably to date. So you may want to take a look at that. I want to understand it. That's all.
I can give you a response actually to both, and then follow up if you want more.
Sure.
IT, we had an IT department head who was in the budget, and she retired right at the end of June last year. That position remained vacant for about 3 months, and we have since filled that position with an IT director. And what you're going to see as the year moves along is those numbers are going to change from what you see right now as actuals begin to fill in. We also are consolidating IT staff. Previously we had an IT manager who was the department head and an IT manager who worked on the team. We also had an IT resource directly in the police department. The person who was in the police department went for and was offered and accepted the position of IT director for the town. So he moved into that position, and that will eventually erode the favorability you're seeing.
Okay.
In addition, we're going to take that position in the police department and put it into the IT budget. So when you look at the IT budget for the FY22 budget cycle, it's going to look different. Police would come down in that position and IT will go up. The strategy, and Roche can certainly speak to a lot more of this because it's his strategy, but the idea is to address many of the longstanding IT needs that we've had. The global pandemic really highlighted a lot of those, but they've been longstanding. And so the first step was to create a structure that didn't unduly burden the town from a cost perspective, but addressed a lot of those issues. So the reason you're seeing the favorability is we're really about, I'm going to say Brian's been on Roche, about a month, maybe 5 weeks. So you're going to see that turn as the months go on.
Okay.
Roche, I don't know if you want to add anything about IT to that. Okay. 61. Part of our challenge that we're seeing there is who is actually covering in these different positions. So what's happening is we're having staff in the VNA who are coming over and covering in the schools as needs arise. We haven't moved that money because we can't move between departments until April 1st. So what you're getting is nurses and health aides between the VNA and the school are a little bit out of balance from where we're actually seeing resources deployed, especially in the midst of this global pandemic. If we have a nurse who either because of contracting or being exposed to COVID must call out, we still have to have nurses and health aides in the school in order to have them opened under this circumstance. And so the VNA administrator, who's also responsible for the school health aides and nurses, is moving resources to try to cover as much as she can, each of those instances. Hiroshi, I don't know if you want to add anything that Wendy's doing or anything. You're on mute.
I mean, I understand, Kevin. My only point is that we authorized 15,000 more, but yet we're not spending, the budgets that we have. That's all. I mean, on Department 3561. So, and I think that's historical too. I think that's happened in the past too, but I just wanted to just bring it up. That's all. Thank you.
Anybody else? Harry, got any questions?
Nope.
Okay, then I think webinar was a successful webinar. We're going to do one next month too, right?
Yes.
We're going to continue this next month, right? We're not going to meet in
Yes.
person next month. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Could I have
Wait, no.
What?
Stop. I got one question for Kevin. Central Connecticut Health District.
Oh, okay. Yes.
We fund that, correct? We fund our whatever portion ours is.
We do contribute. Yes. Yep.
Is there anything in our charter that says we have to?
I don't. I believe we're required to have a health director. The town elects to participate in a regional health district.
How much? What's a dollar? How much we contribute?
If you give me a sec, I can pull it up.
I think under statute, if you are part of a district, you are required to fund your proportion of the district based on your population.
Jerry, did we have a health director years ago?
We did at one time. Dr.
Right.
Chakowski was.
Dr. Tchaikovsky was our health. That's right.
He's the town physician that we're required to designate, and we do pay. The town and Board of Ed pay a combined $25,000 in a recently adopted contract. The council recently approved the next contract with him. So it's $12,500 each to have him as the designated town physician.
No, but I mean, what do we?
How long does that contract run?
Who's the town?
Dr. Giuseppe?
No. Forget about that. How much do we contribute to the health? Like, what's his name? Charlie Brown. He's in charge. Charles Brown is in charge of the.
Just so I just want everybody on the call to understand, Charlie Brown was quoted in the paper in the Herald that he thinks nothing should be open until the virus is gone, and he thinks, well, he said he's going to basically lock himself in his house until the virus is gone. Frankly, I don't like being directed by someone like that. I don't.
All right. Okay. Well, okay.
So I would like to defund it if possible. I understand it's through the council. I just want it on the record that I'm completely opposed to this arrangement.
Well, how much do we contribute to the organization? Out of curiosity.
We're paying just shy of $33,000 a quarter to Central Connecticut Health District this year.
A quarter,
roughly $132,000 a year.
And how much would it cost us to have our own health director if we want to contribute?
I don't have an exact number, but I would suspect having a health director with the credentials would be more than that with salary and benefits.
It's not just the health director. You have to have a whole health department.
That's
You have
right.
Inspectors, you have to have, there's a lot of things the health district does.
Talking about a million, right? So we're better off contributing, right?
Well, you're better off contributing financially if you want the hands of what you're able to do as a town in some guy's office who's cowering in his basement in fear.
Mark, we do offer a board member. The town does place a member on the board for Central Connecticut Health District, and I mean, certainly Charlie works for that board. But yeah,
Who's our board member?
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Ray Jarema is on the board, isn't he, Hiroshi? I believe Ray is our representative on that board.
We should make Mr. Holmes our representative.
Isn't Ray on the water department?
I'm telling you, when Charlie came to do his presentation, earlier, Ray, earlier in the year, Ray was there, and I believe he was introduced as the board member.
Oh, brother.
Can we make Mark Holmes a board? Can we make, maybe if Ray retires, we can make Mr. Holmes a board member? Help
Mr. Chairman.
guide, help guide
Mr. Chairman,
Charlie.
may-
Go on.
Mr. Chairman, may I comment on
Yes, of
the
course.
Charlie Brown Health District?
Yes,
So
go
that,
ahead.
Mark, just so that you understand, he's advisory. During this entire pandemic, they've been helpful. They do advise us, and not all the time, I have not always followed his advice.
I know that. I
And
know
part
that.
of the reason is we have a government to run, businesses to operate, and we need to strike a balance. And he is ultra conservative in terms of his recommendations, and we need to put that into the mix and then think about what we ought to do. So to give you an example, right throughout this time, you've been on telling me that we are the only town that we were meeting in person. He was not happy about it. But we didn't change that until this last month when numbers are really going up. And the Berlin numbers are going up. And we had to, 20 something people in the town and half a dozen people in the PD and people getting positive. We thought it's a good idea, at least for December and January, take a little break. So I just want you to, I think you know this, just because he says jump, we don't jump. We
I know
evaluate
that, but
what's good for the town.
I also know that by executive order, the governor just gave all the health districts more power.
Yeah. I'm hoping that we sort of can focus on the vaccine now and move away from the COVID and get people vaccinated and get everyone healthy. I feel a little bit more optimistic, and by spring, summer, get to some level of normalcy. I think we're all ready for that.
And you're going to let me know how that vaccine works out for you?
I'm not going to take it right now. Wait for a while.
I'll let you know.
I'll let you know. I'm gonna take the vaccine as soon as it comes out. I'll let you know how it works out. Because
Yeah.
I gotta travel in. No, I am. I'm gonna take it right away. I'll be the experimental on the Board of Finance. As soon as it comes out, I will be the first one in line to take it. So I need to start traveling. I've got places I have to go to. Okay, on that, can we adjourn now after we crucified the Health Commission? Can I have somebody move it, please?
Move to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, if I don't talk to you, have a great Christmas and New Year, guys.
You two guys and Dana.
Kevin, Delane, Kevin,
Yes.
are you and Woody going to circle back with me or no? Are you guys all set?
Woody, I think, was going to talk to you guys.
Okay. That's fine.
Okay,
I'll call him tomorrow.
We're all set? Night.
Okay. Good night.
Bye.
Bye, all.